All right, guys, welcome back for another PAWCast. Been a little while, but here we go.
Welcome to the podcast.
Here we are, man.
How's it going? It's been a while.
Fucking A.
We moved in April 20th, and
Yes.
then the world ran at us.
Yes.
Like the whole world.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It has been a significant summer.
Dude.
I think pretty much that that's just the feeling everywhere. We're just like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, made it. No, I think all things considered, I think we did fairly well and are still doing fairly well. But just like anything, we're not perfect, but for what it was, I mean, before we had talked about just talking about survival mode today, but summers like this, stress fundamentals. I think
Yeah. Test your will.
Yes. Yeah. What do you got at the absolute bottom of who you are? Because it's everything else gets stripped away. And I had obviously we didn't make it public, but sent out a video recording to the whole staff last week. Yeah, it was last week. I'm not sure what day it is, but it was last week. Just from a unity standpoint, being like, hey, if you're feeling a bit disenfranchised, like, yes, like all of us took a few on the chin this summer, at least in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I for those that weren't here, because we haven't done one of these since like the first week of April.
No, because we were halfway through the star chart.
Yeah,
Something like that.
so
Maybe. I think.
moved into the new place April 20th, which
Yes.
that month previous that was every day something and
With the building.
with everything.
Yeah.
Moved in, and then it was another month of like just getting our feet under us, and then Memorial Day hit.
What supplies are still in trash bags?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a whole thing.
Yes.
Memorial Day hit. We got absolutely punted
Yeah.
because Memorial Day, those 4 days, we had 205 patients over 4 days.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes.
And then it just didn't stop
No.
at all
No.
for the whole summer.
No.
With
Yes.
3 months of absolute insanity.
Yes.
And yeah, no, it's we were talking before we started that like we've talked about the concept of survival mode on this platform a few times, not a ton, more or less as a result of like the three core problems within the industry. And for us, it was like, all right, it was not necessarily that those problems manifested themselves in full here, but what it did was we had such a massive influx because of being available.
Yeah.
Where it like there was no other response besides like kind of chaos a little bit.
Yeah.
And just this overall feeling of like, holy shit, can we survive this?
Yes.
It was
Yes.
not at all what I expected.
No, and I mean, you remember, so when we said, and actually just quick little sidestep, I think your mic volume has to go up just a titch.
Okay.
Yeah, when we kind of came into the new building, the discussion was like, okay, we have a plan. Actually, I shouldn't even say the new building because we were coming into 2020. And then for you as the marketing director, it's like, hey, we got this marketing plan. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And it was all exclusively like marketing to caregivers and caregiver acquisition and so on and so forth, like just being very dynamic about that. And then again, Memorial hit, and it was just like, oh,
yeah.
We hit markers that, we were talking 2021, it's like, all right, let's new building, 18 months, let's roll through 2020 through the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022. This is where we want to be. And then it was like, okay, so we're just going to blow that out of the water by September 1st.
Right.
It's like, oh God.
Yeah.
And, and again, part of, what had gone on to the staff as well was kind of just that discussion of like, it's just been a lot. It's been a lot for all of us. But is this now the new normal? I think that's the question mark.
Yep.
And I think, especially there's a lot of different factors for us why we had such a huge influx. I mean, again, year to date, I think what did we say? End of August, year to date, it was 6,000. This year we're at 9,000 invoices or something like that. I think we're past that now.
Yeah, we're at like 96.
Yeah, sure.
Which is where we actually this week will be the week that, from a patient served perspective, that we actually beat last year.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
So we're going if we were to maintain current pace, last year we did 9,500 total. This year, if we maintain, which I don't think we're going to maintain the same pace that we have.
No.
But if we were to, I did the math last week. It was 12.6.
Right.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, that's what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
A year from this month.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. That was again, part of the message is that we've had this huge influx of clientele. We're touching on survival mode here in a second, but the thing is that you don't grow staff at that pace.
Right.
So it's, and that's where when you start to look at, the amount of stress that we've undergone as a business for our region, to still honestly, I mean, okay, fine. Yes. The majority of the complaints that we do get are time complaints, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that, which it just is what it is. Which those numbers will go down as we become more efficient, just in dealing with this amount of load. But to have, all the other referral centers or 24-hour walk-in clinics or whatever be at 8 to 12 hour waits, or just simply stop taking clients after a certain point.
Yep.
I think that's where when I think about fundamentals, it's like, all right, well, we have to be doing something that's clearly different, and planning on saying all right, so is the summer of 2020 the snapshot of what the next 5 years is going to look like? And that's then where for us, August 28th, of 2020 is our 5th year of business. So it's, for me, I don't think it's standard. I mean, everyone talks about 10-year plans, 10-year goals, that kind of stuff. And I kind of make a joke, I have a 10-year plan that I live week to week.
Yep.
Yep. But I think the other way is most people have a 1 week plan that they live week to week.
Yes.
And that's I think one of the big differences when you start to talk about fundamentals is it's all right, let's take a step out of ourselves and be all right, not just where the business is, but where's process, where's the fundamentals. And I don't like being in survival mode very long, but I think what this summer has lended us is the opportunity to identify some pretty substantial blind spots, ones that we knew were there. And I do give Dr. Katie a ton of credit because she always, this has come up multiple times. And again, I'm willing to admit and just give her a ton of credit for it, is those things that I tend to procrastinate, that she's like, we need to do this. And I'm like, that's important, just not right now.
Yep.
Let's do that later. It's then it just continues to fester for 3 months and 6 months and 4 years and 5 years. And then it's just well, this is now the hottest fire we have to deal with.
Yeah.
So, and again, for what it is, there's so many different variables on, sort of procrastination, which is an excuse and it's not accountable, but, so again, having something like this summer, and I think everyone in every veterinary clinic is feeling it, is just this uncertainty, the shift, what's happening, what is process, are they still doing curbside? What's their efficiency with, by phone? And that's where I think even for us, we've had patient separation for my entire career. I've never done exams in rooms with caregivers ever. Maybe an exception here or there, but it's not been the standard. We've actually become more efficient with curbside.
Yeah. It's actually felt really good to be hey, we got you. Just go home for a while, because the reality of wait times is there. And it prior to the inception of the pandemic and just not talking to people in person. It's we can kind of normalize the idea of a by phone consultation with a person that you've never met before.
Right. Yeah.
And
may never meet him face to face ever.
Right. And it's not to say that we went full curbside.
No. But just in those circumstances where
allowed
we,
that. I think normalizing it across. It was actually, especially late summer, once we hit, especially because like around those couple weeks before Labor Day, when it was just like you knew everybody. It was just right on that edge. Like everybody. And I remember it was probably 2 or 3 weekends prior to Labor Day, and I was here by myself. And I'm like, I'm kicking every single person out of here today. I can't stomach the idea of someone asking me about a wait time today as they wait in the waiting area. They just need to leave. And thank goodness that was actually welcomed with open arms by absolutely everybody that weekend.
No, I honestly, I'm at a point where I kind of actually think that may end up becoming a pretty substantial standard.
Yeah.
It worked so well. you know, if nothing else other than to save yourself from, like you said, like there's only so much time in an hour. So it's if you have 20 different people that you have to give 20 different updates to on wait times and how patient status is, like that takes longer than 1 minute.
Yes. And never mind the fact that the phone's going to ring 150 times during your 9 hours that you're here. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me. But that sequence of events between like the unsureness of being in the new space, because we moved, like our move-in process took 3 months. Of stuff shifting around.
36 hours then. Like it took us 36 hours to move all of our stuff.
Yes. It did.
And then
and then the
settling in process.
Settling in.
Yes.
We'll use that.
Yes.
And just living in this ether of where is that thing?
Oh God.
And then finally, like during that process, right? Because that was April, May, and June.
Yeah.
And then 4th of July. It's which we've always made the joke, like if it doesn't happen by 4th of July, it's not going to happen this year. Like that became a very potential reality at 4th of July, where it's like, all right, well, none of us have any gas left.
No.
And we just like
no, right. As the second summer holiday, Memorial, 4th of July, and then Labor, it's like you have to gas at Labor and recuperate to Thanksgiving. That's the game. No, we were trashed by 4th of July.
It was absolutely wild to me how, because I haven't been here nearly as long, but I worked 4th of July last year, and I remember everyone coming out of that holiday, even though it was 5 days last year, because 4th of July was a Wednesday. Everyone still had juice at the end of that holiday, and I actually took this 4th of July off. I wasn't even around, and I come back like the Tuesday after, and I'm like, well, everyone's dead. What? Oh, and then I look at what we did for just patient load, and it's like you're pulling 60 a day, and how many? We had a ton of people here. And it still didn't matter.
No. And it's, it was one of those things too where, with Katie and myself onboarding doctors, Christina, Lauren, and Rhiannon, it was like even just being in the building, training with people as, onboarding in that process, even if they aren't as efficient in their process because everything is completely brand new, it's still just more people to try to absorb, the load. And it's, yes.
We made it.
Yeah, we did.
That's like the only response I can really have to it is like,
no.
Yeah, like we had a hell of a time, and like that's why we had to go dark on this as well. It's like there just was not enough time because we brought on Rhiannon, Christina, and Lauren on basically like the middle of May, right? End of May, something like that.
Beginning of June. Yeah.
Beginning of June.
Yeah, I pushed them off till after Memorial.
But like we had that month and a half in there where it's like, well, we can still do we knew that once that came around, it was going to be thin either way, just because your time was going to be invested in them.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, that's not even a thought.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it was like we potentially could have pulled it we had a doctor move out of state, so it was like we could have potentially done more this summer administratively.
Yeah.
I don't think, even with another full-time veterinarian on the floor, I still don't think we would have been able to.
No.
It still would have been the same amount of load.
Like, how much time did you have to spend cleaning?
Yes.
Because it's like, well, everyone that's on the floor,
Yeah.
like, they just, because of that unsure nature of where stuff is for the first few months, and then just getting absolutely obliterated with the volume of patients that's here. It's like, well, someone has to do it.
Yeah.
And I know that they're having a hard enough time focusing on their primary objective. And then it's like, well, all right, well, like, it's either this or it doesn't get done. And like, just if you take a step back and just appreciate the fact that it's like, well, I own the place, and I'm a veterinarian that has 15 plus years of experience, and I'm using the power scrubber
on the floor
for 8 hours today.
Yes.
It's just, I appreciate it. And I think a lot of the majority of people that work here understood, like, oh, well, like, it just sees that it has to get done.
Yeah, right. That's that. It just has to get done.
Yeah. But it gave that insight of like, holy crap, there is so much happening right now. Yeah. And I don't really know where to go with this thought of hitting survival mode, because like, I think I was the first person to say it out loud.
Yes.
But that's because I'm the loudest person that works here. There is that.
Yes.
But
aside
I'm also
from
like,
Mariah.
but I'm not afraid of like reality, because to me, like, right, like, you go to vulnerability, and it's like, I'm going to be the one that puts this out there, because if I don't say it, there's going to be fewer people that are feeling the same way that actually like think it or say it out loud as well. Yeah. So I popped it out there, and the masks thing hit, and like, for someone who's super high engaging like me, I know it sounds really dumb, but if I can't see someone's face, it's harder for me to interact with them. Yes. And it just added fuel to that fire. And this was the first time in my career that I've ever been that fried. I've been cooked before, but I like to be like to the point of essentially completely burnt out. Yeah. And still like, doing my part, just because I know somebody's got to do it. I'm just grinding. Like, I got no oil left in this engine, but I'm just still spinning the gears. Yes. That to me was like, it was a challenge, and it still is. It takes some time to get out of that. Yeah. But it's funny that we got to actually sort of live the life with greater caseload, but live the life of what like a normal clinic kind of experiences every day, like with that one, like, how do I get to Friday mentality? How do I make it through this rotation or whatever that might be? Yeah. Just get to the end of the day. Right. Yep. And to have experienced that, as much as it was different for the reasons that our clinic is different, right. The mentality and the exposure to that was like, oh, so even though we don't have time to do all this other stuff, it just made it that much of a higher priority so that this doesn't happen again. And it's weird to have that perspective now. Yeah. And I'm still digesting it big time. Yeah. Oh yeah. But
it'll take months to really understand what just happened.
Yeah. Maybe years. Yeah. I don't even know. I'm really curious how the rest of the year shakes out.
Yeah. I think we know.
I think we know.
But so, all right, so let's take that further. So, survival mode. So, I mean, I think when you had kind of mentioned it and brought it up, it was like, yes, that's what's happening. Yep. And ultimately, it was then kind of the catalyst for me kind of recording the content for the staff, as well as just being like, all right, like, our highest I individual, yourself, if you're burnt out, it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we have a lot of other people burnt out along the way. But the thing is that it's the ultimate stressor, like on everything, not just, your personal lives, your professional lives, but I think that's where we kind of started, like on the fundamental level, where it strips away everything that's not important, and I should say priority, because a lot of things are important, but as far as like your most immediate priority, and I think when you look at the it being sort of the ultimate stressor. And when you enter into survival mode, I think where people get stuck is they don't know how to get out. And that's where, sort of what our process is. When we start to talk about traction, we start to talk about accountability, we start to talk about the industry overview, we start to talk about all these different things that we've been sort of as the foundation of PAW for as long as it's been, that's why I say, I live a 10-year plan on a week to week. Is it so easy when you go into survival mode? And if you're just existing in survival mode all the time, which the vast majority of our colleagues are, it's, we make the joke living, week to week, 1 week at a time. It's like day to day, hour to hour, bring mental health crisis on top of it. And it's like, I'm not getting out of bed. I don't want to do this. And then it's like, oh crap, we have the crushing debt load that it's like, I have to work. I can't not do this. But every single time I go to work, I'm barely holding it together. And then you throw like a complaint on top of that, or negative feedback from colleagues, or interpersonnel problems. And now it's just not a matter of, oh, I'm getting worked to the bone because this industry is hard and challenging. It's now you have the other part. Then that's just where we kind of start to continue to birth the sort of inefficient process and unnecessary conflict. I mean, that's what this is. So I don't know if you saw the drawing downstairs, but I had the conversation with a couple different staff members that, our 10-year plan was basically saying, okay, like as, we're shooting for super high quality, and as you start to have quality going up and you're going to start to then just pick up quantity because you have higher quality, you're going to start to dip back down in quality as quantity goes up. But that's been our process, is we've been planning for once we finally go over crescendo and we're down on the backside of quality because of quantity, plan for that moment, plan for that time where you take your mark and off you go. That was 2019 to 2020.
Yeah.
We didn't know the pandemic was going to happen.
We didn't know that it was going to kick us in the face like it did either. Like, like you'd think, hey, like unemployment just went from 2% to 22%.
Yes.
Maybe people will have less money to spend on their pets. And it turned out they had a lot more. And they also had a lot more time to spend on that. And my background is in marketing and kind of trying to understand that stuff, and it just absolutely blindsided me. And I'm glad that it did, because it brought us to a better place.
It's like you said, Christmas came early. It's like you get those core family holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, where they're just around and their animals more, and everyone's calm and collected. It's like, I guess the cat has been puking more. But now it's like you said, it's just the global pandemic. Especially people working from home, even if they still have professional careers where they are working. And then the other side is it's all the other frivolous spending went away. Not that I'm going to talk about people's budgets and how they should be spending their money, because it's your money and you can spend it however you want. However, there was less opportunity to actually spend.
We live in Wisconsin. All the taverns were closed. Let's just be honest.
Right.
It's fine. It's fine. We can be honest about the fact that the taverns were closed.
Yes. Which anyone from who's not from Wisconsin, which I'm of course from Michigan originally, it was really weird for me when I moved up here, and all of the taverns are just houses. It's just like one of the biggest houses in a central area that then they put like a deck on in a big parking lot, and they're like, just come drink, and we're just gonna knock down these walls, enough walls that the roof will stay up, but
most of the time,
right. And then they're like, and then we're gonna cook some food. Anyway, not to digress, but yes. Anyway, if you come to Wisconsin, don't plan on going to like a bar. You're just going to someone's house who has a deck.
Built a bar.
Yeah. They knocked out grandma's bedroom, and now they're serving booze
put in
out
a
of it.
Sink and called it good.
Anyway, but yes. So again, I think that's a big part of it. Is there's just less opportunity to spend. Of course, I'm not an economist. I mean, there's a lot of people who are going to say a lot of things, and I could be an idiot, which I probably am. But I think the reality is that what we were assuming was going to be, because we were talking a lot about minimize. Actually, we've always been talking about how to minimize financial impact. Between getting people on payment arrangements to offering several different financing options to then kind of running in-house credit lines. I mean, people used them, but it was also their buying power was much larger, and that was pretty surprising. But anyway, so then what that lends to is increase in quantity. And cases that kind of in we coin as being treat and streets, where it's just comes in the problem. Here's your meds, off you go. We've had more workups, I mean, you said the other day, you're like, Carlo, I don't, if ever, remember the last time you did minimum database.
No.
And I'm like
ever.
Yeah. Ever.
I've been here for a year and a half. I literally don't think I've ever seen a patient, unless like maybe one, because there was probably one in the middle there where it's like, this really is perplexing.
Yeah. Yes.
But like to get Brad's full blood work and urine and a Flex 4, and there was another one in there.
Probably blood pressure.
I think there was like it was the ECG.
Oh yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, number one, this is gonna take forever, which is fine. Yeah. But like, that's that weird process of informed consent where it's like, I told her we could do all these things, and you were actually talking about that after, where it's like, crap, I have to talk about blood work, and she's gonna say yes to that too. But no, that doesn't happen. But that was like Memorial Day was a good example of that as well, because we saw those 205, I believe, patients, and
at least,
so many of them, because Dane worked that weekend too, and Dane loves doing big workups, because that's what he's really good at. Like every one of them. I showed up on that Sunday, and there were, because I worked 10 to 10, and I think there were 7 in line for all 2-view and full blood work, and it's like, well, that's where we're starting today.
Yes.
It was weird. The buying behavior definitely seemed to have shifted, whether it was a focus on health, whether it was just more time available. I don't really know what it was, but
probably multivariable.
And that's you take that a step backwards and you look at, okay, we can acknowledge all of these variables existed in kind of a perfect storm. And then it's like, here's a lot of quantity.
Yes.
Because you also take into the fact that with curbside and other clinics being less efficient, seeing fewer cases, and people getting sick and them having to close their clinics for 3 days and saying, just go to PAW, they'll be fine. And then all the referral centers are pulling 12-hour waits, so people show up here, and now we're getting referral, and then Minneapolis gets set on fire. So Chippewa Falls, that area, starts shipping all their stuff this way. Nobody in the Northwoods does anything.
No.
It's like, all right, well, here's these folks at the intersection of 29 and 39. They'll be all right. And that was we hit what I want to be the bottom of that dip, right? Actually, I
quality
don't,
quantity.
Yep. We'll have to make that up before I publish this and actually throw it on.
I think it's online.
Is it?
I think so.
Because it's quantity or quality goes up. You're only going to hit a certain point. You're never going to be perfect, but it should be really good, right? Like quality. That's the ideal. And then natural marketing, word of mouth. You're going to get more, and then you're going to stress the system, and it goes down. And for us, it's like, well, here's all the stress. Here's all of the potential cases to stress that system, and we did I think it was more. I don't want to say that our quality of care went down substantially. I'm gonna be honest, I don't personally know, because I don't really work back at all.
No, I think it's the slope of the curve. So I think it's when you have that, quantities going up and quality comes down, it's like versus just a very natural trend. And that's what we were planning for. It's like, let's, stress this system over the next 18 months and start to push hard into getting quantity up, and truthfully, intentionally trying to get quality down. Not, necessarily from and we talk about quality, it's not necessarily the quality of patient care, but it's from when they walk in to when they leave. How is the check-in? How is the phone calls? How is the callbacks? How is the, wait times? How is, so that when we talk about quality, it's not, success or failure of cases, because like you had said, on my perspective on the backside being, on the medical, we've actually had, I am not aware of any significant medical problems. Again, and some of those will come through complaint process, which even most of the complaints at the beginning, like I said, have all birthed essentially from wait time and then poor client interaction, so again, or caregiver rather. But anyway, so, but yes, I think it's the slope of the curve. It's just, it was like, here you go. Here's all the things, boom, down. And then, like you said, we want to hit kind of that and plateau.
Right. And if we hit it now, like that makes, number one, that drives my confidence way up.
Yeah.
Because if we are truly at that bottom, I'm still really confident about what we're able to push out. It's just a matter of right consistency and just competence.
Yeah. If our people can hold on for another couple weeks, I think that's why I think that the video was so important, because I mean the message that I was trying to send was, when you talk about survival mode and kind of being the ultimate stressor, is like I think the natural tendency for people who go into survival mode is to talk less and react more. Mm-hmm. So it's if we already have a system where we try to have open communication, but just the natural behavioral tendencies of people in our profession is not to have open and honest conversations in a productive way. Mm-hmm. I think that's, so when you start reacting more, and that's again what kind of the message that I sent out to the staff is, it's like, listen, we just have to start communicating. So I don't care who you communicate with anybody. At the very least, communicate with me. I may send you to the person who you need to communicate with. Even Katie as well, and just communicate with one of us. And saying like, all right, let's not bypass process in our communication. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I still may not be no, you should go through this, and then we'll see how that gets handled. But that's, I think, kind of how when you go into survival mode, and that just continues to break down culture and unity, is that if we just stop communicating, and that's why I said everyone has to kind of hold on for several more weeks, at least to get us up to Thanksgiving, to then re-grab a hold of solutions, and make sure that those solutions are being implemented appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the phrasing that you use I actually find very interesting, because never did I say it out loud, but there were multiple days in the middle of it where it's like, I feel like everything that's happening is exclusively reactive.
Yes.
Like we're just to the point where there's no proactivity anymore. But it's like proactivity requires that, that's that 8 to maintain, 10ten to gain mentality, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And no one's got that extra 2 right now.
No.
Like we're all just we're all just holding on.
Yeah.
And it like there would be days where I would drive home and be like, I don't even know how to become more proactive right now.
No.
And I just like that part was probably the most disheartening part, because I've been in front of it for so long.
Yes.
And then it was like, now I need to say something.
Yes.
That was actually pretty much the tipping point for me to just like put it out there. Right. Because I knew that if I was there, a lot of other people, if not everybody, was also there.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, just to clarify that point, because then we brought up in PAWCast before, but I'll just say it again, is my financial advisor, Mark Gassner, he does our accounting, all that kind of stuff. But when we started the whole process, even before PAW was PAW, when I was like, I got this idea, one of his first questions to me was, how much do you work? And I was like, well, I work. He's like, all right, so the idea is that in your work day, you work 8 hours a day to maintain, and 10 or 12 hours a day to gain. So 8 hours to maintain, 10 hours to gain, 8, 12, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's where I was then saying, well, the problem with our profession is that everyone works 10 hours minimum.
Yeah.
On some days it's 12s, then on call. Then how am I supposed to plan my personal life? How am I supposed to then actually advance my career? How am I supposed to get out of survival mode? How am I supposed to take a 10-year plan and live it week by week? I can't. Well, I can. Everyone has the capacity to. If Carlo Riolo can, everyone can. But the actual implementation of it, identifying solution part to it, it's all very hard, and it just takes time. Mm-hmm. So Caroline and I were actually kind of having that question here between text and in person or whatever. But to that point, I'm just saying, how do you actually get out of survival mode? And honestly, if we just look at it on our accountability, right? Accountability ladder, we just have to recognize that we're in it. That's reality. Mm-hmm. We have to own our part in it, and then come into solutions and implementation. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the really good practices for, once you're in survival mode, to identify essentially that reality component, to see what you can and can't own, is a pros cons list. Yeah. We do it very naturally in the traction process. It's what we call the issues list. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea is everything in your life, everything in your life. It doesn't matter what it is, relationship issues to if you have kids or not, or if you want them and don't, to professional fulfillment, to patient care, scheduling, anything in your list, it can go there. It doesn't matter. And you basically start to look at saying, okay, my current life, where I am at right now, I have to acknowledge that every decision I ever made up to this point got me to this point. Mm-hmm. So if you start to really strip everything away and start to have a really hard analysis of yourself and saying, well, what do I consider to be good? What do I consider to be bad? Well, what do I have of each of those? Like, to me, a pro may end up being having kids, raising a family. A pro may be traveling. A pro may be, whatever this is, but I don't have that yet. Okay, well, I want that. That's what I want to have on my list. So you start to kind of weigh these things out and really starting to set up that, don't go 10 years. Like, have some things way out there on 10 years, but it's if you're living the day to day and the week to week, like, all right, I'm going to set out the things that I really want, and the cons, a lot of the times you try to work into barriers. Like, what is the barrier of that? Am I a barrier in one of my cons? Like, do I have to get over myself? Mm-hmm. That's, for here, we always talk about check your shit at the door. Mm-hmm. But in saying, when you look at your pros, cons, and start to work through it and getting really wide with this, get a huge sheet of paper, write it on a whiteboard, who cares? Start to chip away. Does that mean we have to get a therapist? Does that mean relationship therapist? Does that mean dating sites? Does that mean, whatever it is? And just say, all right, what am I actually going to accomplish this week to this month? And that's what we do with traction. Okay, well, that was my goal for this month, and I didn't hit my goal. It's not to say that I'm a bad or terrible person because I didn't hit that goal, but what it gave you the opportunity is, where's another stressor? Where's another con? Where's another barrier? And then start to kind of move forward to get yourself out of survival mode, and understand that there are also other people in survival mode with you.
Right. Yeah,
and there's a lot of people who want to work to get out of it.
Yeah, and that's actually, so when you talk about climbing the ladder, because that's what the traction process encourages the accountability process to occur, because it's all about how do you get up into implementation.
Yeah.
That it's meant to do that, and as long as you maintain focus on avoiding the bottom 4 rungs that are on that accountability ladder, it's not easy, but it works itself out over time. Yeah. And I think one thing that might be, or that we found that was missing last week before we did the press conference.
Yes.
I don't know another way to say it. Whatever. The video for all of our staff.
No, I told everyone I was having a press conference.
It was a press conference. It's fine. It's not weird at all.
No.
We were talking about the industry overview, and you had brought up communication and how it's lacking, right?
Yeah.
And is it at the center of these problems? And just in that discussion, I think we came to the consensus where it's like, no, it's just, if you don't have communication, you don't ever get out to solutions.
Yes.
So if you were to place communication within the accountability ladder, it's in Own It. That's what Own It is, right?
Yeah.
I'm not actually doing anything besides communicating the fact that I have a part in this.
Yes.
Whether it's communication to myself or to others or to whoever.
Yep.
That's what Own It is communication, because without that process, you never actually get to solution. So we found that basically, you get these problems that are in the core of the industry overview. We are not immune to them. No. We might have a better definition of them, but there are ones that are that the whole idea, right, is industry-wide problems, but local solutions.
Yes.
And when we all hit this state of, well, I got this 9-hour shift in front of me, or I got this 12-hour shift, and when I'm done with it, I'm GTFO. I gotta go breathe. Communication. It was kind of an exponential decrease.
Yeah.
Or it was like, it was okay, and then you saw it slowing, and then it was like, this isn't great, and then it was like 0.
Yeah.
And what happened at that point is when I was like, now we're being exclusively reactive because we're only living in the problems. And so the concept, right, that we put together was, well, you have to have communication to move out. Yeah. So encourage it and create it and make it happen, because if you don't have it, you're never actually going to get into solutions.
Right. Yeah, it's like when we talk about Eye of the Hurricane. Like the only way you're getting through all the shit of the hurricane is like yelling for each other, like, come on, let's go. Hide behind this, go on that, here, do this. And then once you're on the other side, it's like, oh, well, there's solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, the culture, service, and talent as being the three big problems. Yeah, you're never gonna get beyond that with communication.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of the example of I don't remember his name, but the pilot that landed on the Hudson.
Oh yeah. Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks. Thanks, Carl.
You're welcome.
Thank you for reminding me that Tom Hanks landed a plane on the Hudson
You're welcome.
River.
You're welcome.
Well, whoever he was.
Yes. Yeah.
That story has been told because the black box exists, right? What happened in that scenario was, right, it was a high quantity of variables were thrown at them, like, oh shit, this isn't going well. But then their communication never wavered, and that was the only thing that actually created their success in actually landing the plane, because they had, and actually, it's in the culture code. That's where I was thinking of it. Their communication got extremely direct, and like listening back to it, harsh.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
No F's were given.
Yes.
In the words that were being said, because it was like this or we die.
Yes.
Like there's no in between here.
Yeah.
So they it automatically for them, because they had a relationship, it was a safe environment to say whatever had to be said, because they knew that they were all in that for the same purpose.
Yes. Yes.
And like it's interesting that they maintained that awareness in the scenario, because there have been other planes that have just crashed.
Yes.
Because of the fact that they were watching their words to maintain some sort of emotional
whatever.
Right. Just balance essentially. And the reason that's the reason that they all cite to their success is, well, we just didn't pull our punches. Like things were said that had to be done, and we just did them. Yeah. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah. And that story, which I've never actually seen the movie. No. I would be curious how they actually portray that, because none of them actually cite their skill set, except in communication. Yeah. Which fascinates me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, just, so we talk about after actions, right? So after actions give us the opportunity, both a positive and negative scenario, to analyze what had occurred, to identify in the accountable events or multiple accountable events, to then create areas of growth, right? Mm-hmm. Up to this point, we've said you can do it in good scenarios, you say you can do it in bad scenarios. We've done it usually where there's conflict. Yeah. I think the case with CODA these last couple of weeks, that is a positive after action that I believe we need to have.
I completely agree.
Yes. Because it's that same exact thing where, basically I was running a little late for work.
You were on Riolo time, let's just be honest. For anyone that doesn't know, you're never late when you're on Riolo time.
Yes. Caroline hit the nail on the head when she shared a meme of Gandalf, who Katie called Dumbledore and almost killed her, is a wizard. It shows up precisely when he means to, from Lord.
You can just call yourself a wizard.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But I was running a little late. Katie was actually on the floor with Dr. Gaddis, one of our mentees for the summer, and of course she's full time. Mm-hmm. And it was like, Katie was like, I just have to keep this patient alive until Carlo gets here. Mm-hmm. And it was just everything to be done. This has to happen. This has to happen. Carlo's going to get here. And I think it was like maybe 20 minutes late or something. And once I got here, it was like, she was rounding the case to me, and it was the same thing. Shit cut away. Like, this is what's happening, and you need to do this. And it's, and anyone else, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm like, let me just tie my shoes real quick. Yeah. So I'm like, it went from x-rays to pulse ox to, patient breathing pattern. I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, I knew exactly what happened, and everything else stripped away. Mm-hmm. everything else stripped away. It immediately turned into like, we have to have direct communication. And for us, I mean, that was like easily probably one of the most fulfilling trauma cases I've ever had in my career. But it was, you know, in the moment we had to put in bilateral chest tubes, and the patient was under general anesthesia at that time. It already had a couple thoracocenteses. We were already thawing plasma. I think at the end, by the time that patient actually discharged home, it received 10 units of plasma. It had 2 units of packed reds, 3 units of whole blood, and then I took a liver lobe off. Let's see, it was just tons of stuff. I mean, it was just a massive amount that went in this patient. The first 5 hours felt like 15 minutes, like honest to God. And it was as I put in, you know, Dr. Gadd, of course. It's not every day you get the chance to put a chest tube in. You know, it's one of these where I'm like, we got to put 2 in. Like, I'll get the first one in. I'm like, but if you want to put the next one in, like, you're going to have to do it. And then, like, when the rubber met the road, I was like, all right, come on. And she's like, well, yeah, of course. I'm like, all right, let's fucking do it. You know, and it was it was just the same thing. And she rose to the occasion. I actually think she did a better job putting her tube in than I did. But, you know, the point is that, you know, as we were moving through that process, it was, as like you said, it's just no punches were pulled,
right.
You know, and it was, we moved through every single step as it needed to happen at the moment that it happened. And in hindsight, like everybody was like, Carlo, how did you save that animal's life? And the people were like, what? Like, how are we even at this point now? And, you know, I myself am a little dumbfounded, other than saying like, that's what happens when you have 15 years of after hours experience. But the real answer is, like, we had a team who was exactly what the team needed to be when the team needed to be what it needed to be.
Right.
You know, it's like we were fucking exhausted. We did not have any energy to deal with that patient. But at the end of the day, I would say that is easily one of the best patients served, because we were all burnt out. None of us had any energy left, and we just rose to the occasion. It was like, we got to do this shit because otherwise the animal's going to die. And it's, you know, fine. A lot of people are like, if there was any other doctor here, or, you know, if it was at any other practice, I went to another place, this animal would have died. I'm like, maybe, probably, yes. And it wasn't just me. It was that the whole staff rallied around the concept of serving the patient, and it was just, we got to do this. I need you to do this. That needs to happen, and everyone just did it.
Yeah,
that was it. We just did it.
Yeah,
dug in.
So my perspective, because I was here the whole time, was from an outside looking in. Because number one, I'm never a part of treatment stuff.
That's right. You were around too, and your eyes were just this big.
Yeah, and like I would come back, and I try as hard as I can to just stay up front, because there's plenty of stuff to do up there. So like, but the little bit like that I was around, well, there's that. Yeah. And I'm just looking, it's like they're doing a lot of things.
Yes.
And but it was actually fun to watch. It was intimidating to watch too, especially for because I'm a social person. So talking to the medical staff that was still just working on all the other outpatient stuff, they're like, they're just going. Like, I'm just staying out of the way.
Yes.
Because like, not to have jumped into the middle of that would have created more of a problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, and we all recognized, dude, nobody knew what the words were to say that the right way, where like, I'm not going over there, not because I don't want to help, but because I know that if I try to put my hands in the middle of that small team that's communicating that way, I'm only going to slow them down, and it's going to make things worse.
Yes.
And in the moment, it's like, that's super intimidating.
Yep.
And everyone was keeping a close eye, because if the extra hands would have been
needed, they were within earshot,
right?
Yeah.
And it's not like we were just everyone was just avoiding you guys, but there was an active level of passiveness, which seemed it's not passive aggressive is the other the opposite of that, aggressively passive, whatever, but with intention, right? And you talk about like pulling this out of nothing, that's serve the patient,
right?
I came up with an alliteration this morning. Let's see if I can remember it. No, it was something about purpose, but it's all gone. There were 3 P's. It was great. I'm gonna think of it later. But like the only way that you get that fuel, and like, you talk about the scenario of landing the plane. It's the same thing. It's like, well, it doesn't matter how fried I am. The purpose of what's happening here is for us, it's serve the patient. For them, it's passenger. Because if we don't, it's not going to end well.
No.
And because like you can just find whatever gear that you need in the moment, and will you feel the ramifications of that later, just physically? Probably.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that patient was here for a week.
Yeah, Friday to Friday, I believe.
And by the end of that, everyone there was like this additional level of exhaustion because it was so intense.
Yeah.
But it wasn't exhaustion because of a lack of desire. It was just fulfillment of process. And although you do feel that just physically, there's not a mental exhaustion that necessarily goes with that.
No.
And it's definitely not a level of exhaustion that can't be rebounded very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's why, we talk about how do you get out of this survival mode. Survival mode sucks because of mental exhaustion.
Yes.
You don't know how to bounce out.
Correct.
With that comes physical exhaustion because you don't want to get out of bed.
Yes.
So then you talk about how the hell do you get out of it, and it's communication.
Yeah.
And sometimes communication hurts.
Yes.
Sometimes I don't even know the right thing to say.
No.
Sometimes you got to talk to somebody else before you talk to the right person because you just got to like blurt the words out.
Yeah.
You and I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And the idea though is your brain. This is the way I think about it, and I'm not a psychologist. Please don't quote my brain science here. But
brain jelly.
I know that people learn different ways.
Yeah.
People process thoughts different ways. I talk things out. Like I start almost every sentence without knowing where it's gonna go.
Yes.
And my mouth just kind of has thoughts.
Yes.
And thankfully, there's a platform where I can record those thoughts, and that was where this whole thing started. It's like, hey, Carlo, we're just gonna record these thoughts because they're really good.
Yes.
But the idea though is not everyone is necessarily. We're probably not as comfortable in communication, especially in areas where we don't know where our words are going to go because of the concept of hurting feelings.
Yeah.
But if you can remove that element, and that's what Serve the Patient does, that's kind of where I'm getting at. Is if you remove the element of I'm not necessarily here to conserve your emotional state, but I'm here to serve the patient, then you scrub off the emotional management, and all of a sudden things start working better.
And I think Amy is actually a pretty decent example of that. She's very, very quiet, at least in more of a communication setting in the clinic, very competent in her skill set. But when I would talk to her very directly, just Carlo being Carlo in the beginning of her employment, I know that it would have a negative emotional impact, not because I was trying to create a scenario where she was having a negative emotional impact. And now, like even just we had a accountable event a couple weeks ago, and when that had happened, I was of course upset about it, but again, part of forgiveness is you let the emotion away and then you work on the accountability element. Is she had come up to me and she's like, she caught me in the hall and she was just like, hey, I have to talk to you, and how sometimes I get, and she, of course referring to kind of the emotional side, and she held it together the whole time and really focused on sort of that objective part. And I'm not saying don't have emotions, that's not what I'm saying. It's perfectly acceptable to have the emotional component, but to like be able to really focus into the sort of objective part of it and being like, yep, I'm really sorry that this thing had happened, and then it led into an after action, actually 2 of them, and it was kind of this whole thing. But I think of that, I think she that was probably a very significant tipping point for her as an individual, because again, it's sometimes words hurt. You have the feelings component to it, and that's okay. Emotions are totally fine. But when you really start to work up into that, the solution and implementation part, it's I think that's why the forgiveness model is so important. Is a lot of the times it's a matter of like forgiving oneself, which again, yes, in part of how we do the forgiveness model, ours is it's not forbearance.
Oh, exoneration.
Yeah. So it's hard when, you are in, like, if you're in survival mode and, every problem seems to be like it's a bigger problem than it is because you're just emotionally exhausted. I think where a lot of us kind of like regress back to is that it's often more difficult to forgive yourself than it is to have other people forgive you, or, and that's kind of another element to getting yourself out of survival mode, is being comfortable with, again, initiating conversation, but also being able to forgive yourself and or other people around you. Not because forgiveness gets rid of accountability. Forgiveness just gets rid of and releases the emotional angst, the emotional component. And then you start to focus on to solutions and, the implementation side.
The thing that gets in your way is vengeance, right?
Yes.
And that's what you're trying to remove. The concept of vengeance is an emotional one.
Yes.
Like it's I emotionally desire an eye for an eye, so you allow that to be removed from the equation, so you can refocus on why you're actually there. Yep.
So Caroline, actually, after my press conference, Caroline had sent a email to me just asking, like, how do you end up creating an environment where you have open and free communication, but it's not tattletaling? And it's like, well, that's what we refer to as like our snitch loop. Is that I think now it's become a little bit more commonplace to hear the word whistleblower. So, you hear that a lot more in the political realm now of whistleblower. And the whole point is on these whistleblowers is someone who comes forward to try to, at least in some way, shape, or form, be like, there is a freaking problem and someone has got to do something about it, So the way, and it's of course Caroline, to answer your question, is how do you end up opening communication without you yourself becoming sort of the punching bag of the team and be like, well, she told administration, or he said this, or blah blah. And what it all comes down to is having an accountable team. And so for us, we talk about core values is trust, unity, respect, and accountability. And all those things have to work together. So when you talk about a snitch, right? A snitch is, obviously, well, they tattled on me, right? It's like, all right, well, if you look at it from a snitch perspective, it's like, are we saying that the only way to garner respect is for us to hide problems? And that's the thing. And then the next one is then when you look at the drama dynamic of your persecutors and your victim rescuer roles, is that's the whole snitch dynamic. Drama dynamic is snitches live in this unaccountable world of there's always a persecutor, there's always a rescuer, there's always a victim. So if you have a team that is a bunch of victims, as soon as you come forward trying to establish accountability, you are now their persecutor. Versus the other side is if you have an accountable team, you have a group of people that are focused on creating solutions and implementing those solutions for a common cause here at Serve the Patient, is that when you see something and you say something and you bring it to anyone, whether it be, administrative or so on and so forth, the whole idea is you're trying to help people grow.
Right.
And if you end up having a snitch group, or essentially just the drama triangle, but if you are being persecuted for coming forward with something, that should be a massive red flag that either you need to get out of the team or start to institute pretty drastic change to change the team culture. And for us, that was 2015. 2015, we lost 2/3 of our employees by the middle of 2016. Why? Because we were done with the drama. We were done with this whole snitch mentality. And that's where, for us, our organizational chart is an inverted org chart. The whole idea is that administration is there to help you. The whole idea is that we are there to help communication, to help interpersonal issues. And if you're just not ready, if you think that there's a tattletale, like as the accountable event that Amy caught me in the hallway for, and so on and so forth, we went through a single after action, simply wanted an acknowledgement of what some of these problems were, and one of the employees quit. And it's fine, because again, part of that was the drama dynamic, the victim rescuer, the tattle, it's like, well, excuses and blaming. Well, I was never told this and I shouldn't have been told that. So it's the same idea where it's like, no, by all means, like Janessa absolutely should have came forward with that. And everybody who then rallied around the idea of, yeah, shit, we fucked up. Right. Perfect.
Right.
That's right. Awesome. That's reality to owning it, and I think, like you had said before, own it on the accountability ladder. own it is like, I feel like it's not talked about enough. You know, everyone wants to talk about reality and then immediately run to solutions and implementation. It's like, no, you got to be a little bit more deliberate about ownership, and it's tough. And that's where I think your forgiveness comes right into that. Yeah. Is the own it and then into solution is that's how you kind of move forward with it.
Yeah. Like, I think we just kind of gave ourselves a good transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
For
Yes.
the next
Oh,
one.
yeah. I knew we were getting
I
close.
have no idea how long we've been doing this, but it's okay.
It's not bad. About an hour.
So, recap.
Yes.
I gotta switch cameras. I'm still learning.
Yes.
Survival mode sucks.
Yes.
Let's just be honest about that.
Yes. All of us are in it as a profession.
We got yoked into it. And thankfully, you know, I think we're getting to the point where lights at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
If we're not already there. I know I'm getting there.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever that might be. But I'm glad that we had the experience of truly just everyone's fried.
Yep.
No one wants to talk anymore because, like, we all know that we're going to say harsh stuff. And, like, we lived through it. We're still in the middle of it. It will probably make its way out of the woodwork again at some point.
Absolutely.
It's kind of an inevitability.
Yeah.
But thank goodness that it happened, because we learned what the solution is, and it's actually very simple. Like, it's a pre-solution. Just talk.
Right.
Just say stuff.
Yes. Yeah. In an accountable, productive way.
Well, right.
Yes.
Right. It's not toxic venting. It's not just snitching to snitch.
Yeah,
or like just to try and throw other people under the bus and excuse yourself from problems.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Like, there's a right way to do it, but sometimes words are going to be hard to. They're going to be hard to say the right thing, but they're also going to be hard to just say well.
Yes. And you got to try, and you have to screw that up, and you have to be open with screwing that up.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up as well. Is like you said, it's just like you want to do it, you want to move, you try, it wasn't the best, you know, and then it's like, oh crap, no one respects me because I really botched that one. Like on that after action, pretty much had Janessa run the after action. She's like, I just don't think, and I don't know if I did. I'm like, you did a fantastic job,
right?
Because you tried,
right?
You know, and that's so part of communication. And like you said, just setting the plan. Like, I'm not saying you got to have a 10-year plan. I'm not saying you got to have a 5-year plan. But remember, you know, 8 hours to gain, 12 hours. 8 hours to maintain, 12 hours to gain, 10 hours to gain. Just really start to sort of time hack that element and being like, all right, I have to try to get myself out of this. And like you said, it's communicate with therapists, communicate with your team, communicate with business owners, communicate with partners, communicate with, you know, spouses. Like, it doesn't matter. You have to start to have the conversation, essentially pros cons list. What's good, what's bad, what do I want, what do I need, what don't I need, what don't I want, you know, and really starting to move that forward and having a very deliberate conversation about what is and is not important. And I think right now is the perfect time, because like we said, survival mode is the ultimate stressor. It strips everything else away, and it makes you really focus on the stuff you need and don't need and want and don't want. So it's a perfect time for people to run out pros, cons, and start to set out plans.
And for problems to be noticed, and for us to utilize what we commonly refer, and it'll probably have a different name at some point, but the snitch loop.
The snitch loop,
I think we should talk about that next time.
I
know that we've talked about it a little bit.
Well, I think it'd be a segue for the new creating accountability diagram, because it's in there. It's not written in there, but it's in there as far as a loop. So we can do that. We could talk a long time about that one. We could
probably talk a long time about that one. So, all right, I'm going to shoot the camera over to you, sir. Take us out.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in for another podcast. We'll catch you next time.